Good Shabbos, everybody. We're going to be taking a look at some really old passages. They're from Bible, and some of them are from the book of Deuteronomy, and some of them are from the book of Samuel. And they were written maybe 3,300 years ago and 3,200 years ago, about 150 years apart. More than 3,000 years ago, this stuff was written. And it really talks about leadership. The Torah portion talks about, the Torah portion is Korach, and it's in the book of Numbers. It talks about a group of people that called mutiny against Moses and Aaron. And they were Moses and Aaron's cousins, and they used fear and lies and slander, and they were held accountable for their actions, and it didn't end pretty for them. And it tells us about what to look for in a leader. The Haftarah, which is the thing written about 150 years later, is from the book of Samuel. Now, Samuel was the very last of the judges. He was also a prophet, but a judge. It was one of the people that led us after Moses brought us to the land. There was a period where we didn't have a formal king, but these were the people that were very close to God, and they were the ones that led us. And Samuel was really, really good. And Samuel, he didn't have kids that were fit to take over the leadership. And the people kind of revolted. And they said, we want a king. We want a king. We don't want to be led by someone that just happens to be close to God. We want a big guy that rides on a horse and has an army, just like all those other nations do. Now, it's interesting. In the book of Deuteronomy, Moses says God's words, and they predict when you come into the land, you're going to want a king. Listen to what it says. And this is, remember, this is ancient stuff. It talks about a leader. And I'm interested to hear if you think if any of this is relevant to today. I'm curious to hear if you think it is. And it says, and when you come into the land, I'm reading from the book of Deuteronomy, 17, chapter 17, verse 14. When you come into the land which the Lord your God is giving you, and you possess it, and you dwell therein, and you say, I want a king, like all the other nations all around me. You can have a king which God will choose, one from among your brethren, and they will be, that king will be set over you. You may not put a foreigner over you, someone who is not your brother. There are some stipulations. That king shall not multiply horses to himself. In other words, he can't have too big an army. Nor cause the people to return to Egypt. In other words, not make, it says then not go down to Egypt to get more horses. He can't, to that end, he should, you can't go down there. You can't make a pact with an enemy that benefits the king and hurts the whole country, is sort of what that's saying. The king can't make a deal with an enemy to profit by it at the expense of the country. Neither shall the king multiply wives to himself. So you can't have too many wives, or mistresses, I guess, that his heart turn not away, nor shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold. In other words, he can't, while he is king, do things that profit him and his family. He can't do that. This is Torah. This is ancient stuff. And it shall be when he sits on the throne of his kingdom that he shall write a copy of this Torah in and out of which he shall read it every single day, in order that he may learn to have a sense of awe for Adonai and keep the words of this law and these statutes and do them, and that his heart not be lifted up above his brethren, and that he turn not aside from the commandment to the right hand or to the left, to the end that he may prolong his days in his kingdom and his children in the midst of Israel. What's the thing that says more than anything else in Torah? Be kind to strangers. And he's got to read that every day, that he's got to realize he shouldn't be any haughtier than all the people that he serves. Because the sovereign power doesn't reside in the king. The sovereignty resides in the people as they serve God's teachings. That's where according to Torah, where the sovereignty lies. So now, when we get to our Haftarah, and this is early on when we actually do ask for a king. And I'll read the translation of the Haftarah. Then Samuel said to the people, "Come, let us go to Gilgal and renew the kingdom there." And all the people went to Gilgal, and there they made Saul king before the Lord in Gilgal. And there they sacrificed sacrifices of peace offerings before the Lord. And there Saul and all the men of Israel rejoiced greatly. So in other words, they appointed Saul. A little earlier on, Samuel warned them. He says, if you really want a king, that king is going to take your men and they're going to be part of his army, and your women, your daughters, and they're going to be part of his palace, and your horses are going to be part of the cavalry, and you're going to be paying taxes to have a great big palace. But the people didn't listen. And Samuel said to all Israel, "Behold, I have hearkened unto your voice in all that you have said to me, and I have made a king over you. And now behold, the king walks before you. I am old and gray-bearded, and behold, my sons are with you, and I have walked before you from my youth unto this day. Here I am, witness against me before the Lord and before his anointed and before Saul the new king. Whose ox have I taken, and whose ass have I taken? And whom have I defrauded, and whom have I oppressed? Or of whose hand have I taken a ransom to blind mine eyes therewith? If so, I will restore it to you." Isn't that interesting that the leader of the people keeps turning to the people and says, I am subordinate to you. I am accountable for my actions. If anybody has any complaints against me, I want it brought out into the open. That's what makes for a healthy leadership. That's what makes for a great nation. That's what makes a nation great, is by making it good, by making the leaders accountable for their actions and realizing that they serve the people, not the other way around. He said unto them, "The Lord is witness against you, and is anointed as witness this day, that you have not found aught in my hand." And they said, "He is witness." So in other words, all the people said, right, you haven't done anything wrong to us, with God as witness. And Samuel said unto the people, "It is the Lord that made Moses and Aaron, and that brought your fathers out of the land of Egypt. Now therefore stand still, that I may plead with you before the Lord concerning all the righteous acts of the Lord, which God did to you and your fathers, when Jacob had come into Egypt, and when your fathers cried unto the Lord, and the Lord sent Moses and Aaron, who brought forth your fathers out of Egypt, and they were made to dwell in this place. But they forgot Adonai your God, and God gave them over to the hands of Sisera." They recount all of the different things, and the people realized that they really had a leader, and the leader was God. And they realized that they had sinned in asking for a king and in wanting to turn to and serve a king. But God allowed them to do that. It's a warning that's out there, and I will leave it to you as to whether or not you think it's relevant to today.